I'm very pleased to speak with all of you today. You're part of the future of America, to study engineering and to use it for the benefit of all mankind. That has been my goal, and I hope you learned something from my lecture today to make it your goal, because there's a great deal of satisfaction in that. So today I'm going to talk to you about three of my few hundred patents and inventions, about three medical devices that have been used by many, many persons in the US and around the world. And I call our field Engineering for Humanity. And I think it's one of the best fields of engineering that any of us could do. So in today's lecture, and if you don't mind, I'm going to sit down, because I am, in fact, 4 months from 90 years old. So today's lecture will be a presentation about three medical devices. The first is a new means that's actively being used for the treatment of epileptic seizures. The second is a way that we have recently received FDA clearance for, which is a device, if you have it, you will not die of a heart attack. The third device that I'm working on very actively now is a device that's able to eliminate all human pain without medications or side effects. And so let us begin. The first company we're going to talk about is called NeuroPace Inc. And it's a device that prevents epileptic seizures by detecting a precursor of that seizure in the brain and providing electrical pulses onto that region of the brain to prevent the seizure from happening. Is there anybody here in the room who has epilepsy or knows somebody who has epilepsy? Raise your hand. See, that's quite a few hands. So the prevalence of epilepsy, 1% of the world population, 2.3 million Americans with epilepsy, 700,000 with uncontrolled seizures, 1.4 million with medication side effects. One of the wonderful things about the medical devices that I have developed is that they have no side effects. The cost in the USA in last year, the cost to the USA, $22 billion. We need a better way to treat epilepsy. So what is our concept for it? I'll show it to you in this diagram. Here is a computer system that's about 1 inch wide, 1/4 inch thick, and 2 inches long. And it is a computer system that's connected to a wire, one wire, the blue one, deep in the brain. If the epileptic seizure begins there, we detect it there. If the epileptic seizure begins on the surface of the brain, we have 5 electrodes there to detect the start of the epileptic seizure. So we then have a response to it by, if we sense the seizure, we then run an electrical current through that portion of the brain, and it prevents the seizure from occurring. So it detects and terminates seizures before clinical symptoms appear. It provides stimulation only when it's needed. If you don't have a seizure, it doesn't do anything. Can be turned off if the seizures disappear, which has happened in a few of our patients. It has minimal side effects. It's just implanted. Once implanted, there are really no side effects. And it's invisible cranial implant that if you have it, no one knows you have it because it's been just replace a piece of the cranial bone with the device. So how have we done certainly early on with this? So here are some cases in which we've done and we've treated. First of all, the red line was for the placebo patients who had it put in but not turned on, to see the difference. The blue line is the reduction in the number of seizures per day for patients in whom we turned it on. Amazingly, but not always surprisingly, in the first month, whether it's placebo or treated, they both had improvements. But then the truth started to prevail, and the blue line shows a dramatic reduction in having seizures. Fewer than 50% as many seizures as the patients had before the implant. So how do we do relative to drugs? Well, here we see that with responsive neural stimulation, 15% of our patients never had a seizure again. This is the leading drugs. Look how what percentage of them never had it again, and by none of them in the long run really succeeded with it. So what is the retention rate of our product versus the use of drugs to treat epilepsy? That's in this diagram. Here we are, responsive neural stimulation. More than 90% of our patients retain it, but these are the different drugs used, and they don't get retained because after a while they don't do the job. So, the good news. The NeuroPace responsive neural stimulation device was presented to a review panel by the FDA on February 22nd, 2013. The final vote on the panel was 13 yeses to 0 no's that the device is safe, 12 yeses and 1 abstention the device was effective for the treatment of epilepsy, and 11 yeses and 2 abstentions that the device should be approved for use in the USA. And so, in its usual way, the FDA said, how can we slow it down now? And what they did was saying, but you don't know that maybe the device will damage the skull or something. So we had to put it in rabbits for 6 months. And finally, 8 months after the unanimous approval, the FDA finally was forced to approve us so that American patients now by the hundreds each month can get the device. So the usage in the USA is now climbing upward at a high rate. I'm very glad to say that, and so are the fortunate patients who've been able to use the device.
In medical news, there is new hope tonight for the millions who suffer from migraines. The headaches hit women especially hard, almost 3 times as many as men. And often the medication just doesn't work. Now there may be an effective pill-free alternative. As Sharon Alfonsi reports, it's medicine on the cutting edge.
When Carol Murphy gets a migraine, she can barely lift her head.
I've been to the hospital 6 or 7 times to finally say, I am too tired to fight this. Just give me anything, I really don't care.
Now, a new device allows migraine sufferers to take treatment into their own hands. It's called a transcranial magnetic stimulator, or TMS. You push a button and the TMS sends 2 very brief magnetic pulses into the brain. Scientists believe those pulses short-circuit the building electrical storm in the brain that occurs just before a migraine. It's called an aura.
It turns on a very powerful magnet, and that generates a tiny amount of current in the brain that has the effect of turning off the migraine aura.
7 million Americans have migraines with auras, changes in vision like spots or graying. This study looked at 201 patients with aura migraines. 39% who tried the device say they were pain-free 2 hours later. Carol Murphy was among them.
There was no pain. I waited that 10 minutes and nothing happened. And nothing happened ever again after that. And it was like, this is some sort of miracle.
For about half the people who suffer from migraines, medication doesn't work. So this offers some hope, but it hasn't been approved by the FDA yet. So Carol Murphy had to give hers back.
Please, I want my machine back. I want my life back.
For migraine sufferers, the only thing more excruciating than the headache may be not being able to get your hands on the one thing that could stop it. Sharon Alfonsi, ABC News, New York.
So let us go on to the next thing, and which is a company I started called Angel Medical Systems, Inc. It's an implanted device, implanted in the chest like a pacemaker, that detects the occurrence of a heart attack before the patient realizes that it's happening. Acute myocardial infarction, or AMI, is a big word so the doctors can charge you more money for having a heart attack. And we'll talk about what the situation with AMI in the United States. The annual incidence in 2015 was 1.2 million Americans had a heart attack. The annual mortality rate, about 40%, 500,000 died. Approximately 50% have significantly damaged heart muscle, which can lead to congestive heart failure. Thus, about 90% or 1 million of these heart attack patients either die or have significant damage to heart muscle in the USA every year. Symptoms are often denied by the patient, especially us men, because we are very brave. You got that? Now you recognize bravery when you hear it. 20 to 25% of all patients never have any symptoms, and they really need something to tell them they're having a heart attack so their life can be saved. This is most likely in diabetic patients and elderly women. So we started a company called Angel Medical Systems. The average time from a heart attack to get to the hospital emergency room is 3 hours. The average time from emergency room to get treated for a heart attack is about 3 hours. So the total time, you see how good I am at adding, total time about 6 hours. No other device other than the one we have can warn a patient that a heart attack is occurring. The Angel Medical device provides a solution for detection within 90 seconds of the onset of the heart attack, and you can arrive at the hospital within 30 minutes and we will save your life. Now, how do we do this job? Okay, I'm about to make you each an expert on heart attacks. Here, this looks like an electrocardiogram, right? When you measure it in the heart, it's called an electrogram, but has the same general picture and shape, but is much higher voltage when you do it in the heart. These, I don't know why they call this QRST instead of ABC, maybe so they can charge more money for treating heart attacks. But what happens when the yellow is normal. This piece here is equal to that piece there. So PQ is this segment is equal to ST. In a heart attack, the ST jumps up to a higher voltage. So if we have a computer that can detect the difference between this voltage and that voltage, we can detect a heart attack every time, and we're doing it. So that is all there is to Angel Medical. So let's see what happened when we tried to do this. First, we thought, by the way, pigs have a heart that's almost identical to humans. Why, I don't know. So here on top is the electrocardiogram of a pig with a normal heartbeat. Now we see what happened. By the way, we put in a copper stent in the pig, and that's a really bad thing. It causes a heart attack. But we wanted to see the pig's signal on his electrocardiogram. So next we see it sometime later, from Thursday morning to Friday morning. And now you see it changing it, and look what we see. ST much higher than PQ. You see that after the R wave, how the voltage went up? The R wave is that very sharp spike. That's what we detect for a heart attack in human. So here it is again, and here is the pig going into ventricular fibrillation, which happens before you die, and then the pig was flatlined, which means the heart was no longer functioning. So we showed exactly what happens with an animal which has the same type of heart as a human. So then I got my son, Tim, who's a cardiologist, to say that let's try it on a human. Let's give them an artificial heart attack for 2 minutes, and let's watch them and see how we detect. So this is what we did. And here we see, like here we see ST, and here's the other thing. Look at the height here. So as this blockage, what he did is he put a stent in the patient's heart, inflated the balloon, and therefore there's no blood flow, which is a heart attack. And then he measured the electrical signal, deflated, the heart went back to normal. Then he did it again later, and look how severe it becomes. So what we do with Angel Medical is we detect the voltage difference between here and here, and when we detect it, we tell the patient you're having a heart attack, and I'll show you how we do that. So here is the system that we have. We have in the patient, we have this device. It has a wire in the heart that sees the electrical signal in the heart. And if you detect a heart attack, it vibrates like your cell phone. It goes beep, 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 beep. And then your external device that you have in the pocket goes off with an audio with the same thing. So you can press a button in the middle, turn it off, and immediately get to the hospital. And here's just a programmer that can program it for everybody's unique characteristics. So, how have we done? We can accurately detect coronary occlusion, which is a heart attack, get patients with occluded coronary arteries to the hospital faster, alert patients who have no symptoms, who would otherwise not present to a medical facility, notify patients of other heart-related conditions that require treatment, reduce the worry of knowing when your next heart attack might occur, because that event could cause your death. Each of our patients, when the battery wears out, they only last 7 years, says, give me a new one because I don't want to worry about having a heart attack. So how is it performed? It was dramatic and statistically significant reduction in the median time to the emergency room for patients with positive tests. 51 minutes from detected to hospital versus 1,808 minutes, which is 30 hours and 8 minutes, for people who did not have it. And when it comes to a heart attack, time is myocardium, meaning if you get there sooner, your life can be saved. If you get there later, it will not be. And this product does the job of getting you there on time. Across an average of 2-year follow-up, we detected and alerted 30 patients, including 23 with core lab confirmed heart attacks. We accurately detected each and every heart attack as it was indicated by our device in the FDA trial, and therefore, after only 16 years and $160 million, this FDA approved finally on April 8 of this year, after only 16 years of very hard work and $160 million invested. So it's not the easiest field to get into. But let's see what my son, Tim, has to say.
So as an interventional cardiologist, thinking about this device and what it could do, what we've seen it do already, we could have a very stark contrast, I think, in the future between patients who are at risk of having heart attack with and without a guardian device. So if we take, for example, especially say elderly women who are at risk of having heart attacks and who often have atypical symptoms, and she might ignore her symptoms for hours, days, maybe even weeks. And then she ultimately has a big heart attack, doesn't recognize that, and comes into the emergency room very late, 3 or 4 hours into the heart attack, lucky enough that she didn't die, but is already going into what we call cardiogenic shock. Her blood pressure is low. And by the time we get her in the cath lab, 2 hours later, she's even sicker. And we ultimately go in and put a stent in and open her artery. At this point, she may be so sick that she actually has to have a breathing tube put in and be sent to the coronary care unit and be in the hospital perhaps 4 or 5 days if she's lucky, and end up with a large heart attack and a huge hospital bill. Or we can contrast that, let's say, the same woman who had an Angiomed device. She had known coronary disease. They put this thing in because she had a stent put in 5 years ago. And now, 3 days before this big event was going to happen, she's having very modest symptoms. The alert goes off, and she calls 911, comes into the hospital, and they download the signal seeing these significant changes in the electrogram in the heart, bring her to the cath lab, take a picture, and see a ruptured plaque with some clot and haziness. But she's fine, she's stable. I just put a wire down through there, put a stent in, inflate the stent, take it out, send her home that evening or the next morning at a very low cost, and she's lost no heart muscle cells. She's alive, healthy, able to go out, whatever, compared to the other patient who's still sitting in the coronary care unit, just having her breathing tube removed and hoping to survive, and then again having perhaps $1 million worth of healthcare expenditures over the next 10 years dealing with this horrible large index heart attack.
I'm going to talk about one of my favorite companies, the one I'm working on now intensively. The name of the company is Zygood, like Zygood, but able to get a trademark. A device that uses intense magnetic pulses onto the human body to relieve pain from various medical conditions such as lower back pain and the foot pain from cancer chemotherapy or diabetic neuropathy. What is transcutaneous magnetic stimulation, or TCMS? It's a means and method for eliminating or significantly reducing the pain experienced by human subjects as a result of a variety of human conditions. By the application of Faraday's law, a high-intensity magnetic pulse will generate an electrical pulse within those neurons that sense pain that prevents those particular neurons from sending the signal to the brain that the brain recognizes as pain. When you have pain, how do you know you have pain? There are special neurons within the human body whose only job is to tell you when you have pain. How do they tell you you have pain? They send a series of electrical pulses from that neuron along an axon to your vertebrae to your brain, and that series of electrical pulses says, I'm having pain in this finger. If we have a lot of pulses per second, high pain, fewer pulses per second, less pain. So that's how the human body senses pain. So how can we do something about that? Electrical stimulation to relieve lower back pain has already been proven by the surgical implantation of electrodes along the spinal column using implants from Medtronic, a giant company, Advanced Neuromodulation Systems, and Advanced Bionics. Each one of those devices requires surgical implantation and maintenance for the production of electrical pulses along your back. And they cost $40,000 each. So this is what they look like. And I'll talk to you about them some. So here is a vertebrae, And here are a series of electrodes along the vertebrae. And if you have back pain, these electrodes connected, for example, to a device like this. This device would be in your body. This device would connect with it. And when you have pain, you can turn it on and put electrical currents and voltage along your spine and reduce your pain. So that doesn't seem to be anything to do with magnetics, does it? But our first goals for the TCMS, transcutaneous, through the skin, magnetic stimulation. We want to eliminate foot pain caused by cancer chemotherapy. We want to eliminate foot pain caused by diabetic neuropathy, eliminate lower back pain, and eliminate the rotator cuff shoulder pain that so many people get. And how do we do that? Well, this is how we do it. We have a pulse generator plugged into the wall, and these knobs adjust how many pulses and how strong. And we have wires connected to, these are wires from the patent that are wrapped around the foot. And with this, we can put a great deal of electric current. At our peak, we're using nearly 8 million watts of electric power for 5 microseconds. Think about it. 5 microseconds that convert to a magnetic field, the peak field, 20,000 times the Earth's field for a few microseconds. And it is the time rate of change of magnetic field in an electrical conductor like a human body that converts to an electrical current. So we can get electrical currents into the body better than if we could, for example, TENS, transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulators. Has anybody in the audience ever heard of TENS and used it? Well, there are a few. These are electrodes you can put on your back, and when it's first turned on, it's painful. Our system is never painful, and we can get very much more electrical pulse onto the pain neuron with no discomfort, because the body attenuates electrical signals when it goes in, because the body conducts electricity, but it does not attenuate magnetic pulses because the human body is not magnetic. And in the body, by Faraday's law, the magnetic pulse converts to electrical that acts on the electrons, the pain neurons, act on the pain neurons, and causes them to be unable to send to the brain the message that's pain. So here is a picture of the coil that we put on the back. Some people have lower back pain. So what's our market opportunity for this product? The following are estimates from the Institute of Medicine as to the patients with pain in the United States. The number of USA patients who are treated for pain each year, about 100 million. Now that's not a bad market. The annual medical cost for the treatment of pain in the United States is about $600 billion a year. Now, I am not greedy. I'm willing to only take 10% of that. Is that being greedy? Only 10%. The annual sales revenue for implanted spine electrical stimulators, and they cost $40,000 each, and it's major surgery, $2 billion a year. Now it's a $2 billion market, and it's growing at the rate of 15% per year. We can replace that with no implant. So what have been our recent results? There's a Kaiser Permanente hospital in Largo, Maryland. It's not very far away. We have treated 13 patients with severe foot pain from cancer chemotherapy and diabetic neuropathy, have all been treated there while I watched. That was in the last 2 months. Of these 13 patients who had no means in years to reduce their foot pain, 8 of the 13 were completely cured of pain, and 5 had reduced pain, and each patient had a restored normal walking gait. When these patients walked in before our treatment with the foot pain they had, they would walk like this. And when they walked out, they were like this. And my biggest pride, one of them had a brace on his right foot. And he walked in with it like this. Tell the doctor, you know, I've been working on me for 2 years, I still have the pain. He walked out skipping, holding the brace. That'll make more than your day. That'll make your week or month. So, at the University of Maryland Hospital this past Monday, one patient with severe foot pain from diabetes for 8 years was again completely cured of pain when nothing else that medical staff had that made it possible for a cure. Tomorrow, 3 more patients suffering foot pain of diabetic neuropathy will be treated for severe foot pain at that hospital in Baltimore, so I'll have something to do tomorrow. I still have a few slides. The purpose of these slides is to tell each of you young people, sort of give you some philosophy about life that I have used and has been moderately successful. So what have I learned in my 89.7 years? Give yourself the opportunity to get lucky. For example, the device I described for treatment of pain with a magnetic pulse was the first named inventor is my wife, Susan, who has no training in engineering. We went out with some friends. This friend had severe foot pain from 2 years of cancer chemotherapy. My wife suggested we use the migraine device to erase her foot pain, and I'm listening. I said, that's one of the ridiculous things. I don't think it has a chance to work, but when we get home, I'll give you 10 magnetic pulses on your head and 10 on your left foot, and if by some miracle it works from your head, both your feet will be better. A different miracle, it works locally, your left foot will be better. The neighbor calls an hour later from home and says, I have no pain in my left foot, and that is how Angel Medical Systems began. We treated her right foot every day for a week, and at the end of the week, she said for the first time in the year, she could feel the carpeting under her bare feet. So always give yourself the opportunity to be lucky. If your spouse has some cockamamie idea, try it anyhow. Problems can create excellent opportunities for innovation. In your life as engineers or scientists, whatever, if you see a problem, don't say just there's a problem, say, and what can I do with my great education to solve that problem? That's how I live my life. When the world gives you lemons, make lemonade. I've had, like, when the wife suggests you try something that you know won't work, try it anyhow. The harder I work, the luckier I get. You think about that. The harder I work, the luckier I get, and it ain't all luck. Do not follow where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and blaze a trail for others to follow. That's something I've lived my life with for these many years, and it's working. Some more philosophy. The difference between what is impossible and what is possible is often determined by persevering and the unrelenting desire to overcome obstacles and your drive to continue, even though some people have told you that it can't be done or it'll never work. Of my about 12 medical device companies that I have started, and there were, I think, at least 11 successful. More than one person told me it would never work, but we took our strength, worked on it, and we made it work. So think about that. Just because someone says it won't work, you think about how to make it work. Some more philosophy. The most consistent attribute of the greatest inventions that have ever been made is that they were preceded by a constant series of disheartening failures. Take it from an expert. When it comes to disheartening failures, I've had a great number. But in the end, we've gotten essentially all of them to work. And the next slide was a good day that I had at the White House about a little over a year ago with a former president. And he said, when he gave me the National Medal for Technology and Innovation, that it was for the innovation of novel medical devices used for the treatment of many illnesses, thereby improving the health and saving the lives of millions of patients around the world. So if you work hard like I do, you can have it with some future president. And the last philosophy, from a poem by Robert Frost. Only when love and need are one, and I love to work and I need to work, and workers play for mortal stakes, is the job ever really well done for heaven and the future's sake. And that's it for today.